All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining in today. My name is George Birch. I had the opportunity to speak on Friday at the October Power Summit, and I imagine I must have done a good job because as soon as I sat down, Wendy ran over to my table and said, "No good deed goes unpunished. You're going to be the kickoff speaker at the February Power Summit." And the topic they gave me was the Power Summit was going to be themed the Elite Eight. And so my topic was going to be, what does it mean to be elite? And like any fledgling affiliate, I went right to the expert. And I sent Doug Brown an email and said, "What's your definition of elite?" And this is what he sent me back. So I thank Doug for that. And in all seriousness, I put Doug up to that. And I'll get back to what Doug Brown told me about elite a little bit later. So going back to February BC, which was before COVID, I returned from my vacation in Florida and was getting ready to prepare for my big opportunity to be the kickoff speaker at Power Summit. If we had had that March Power Summit, the Thursday of our meeting would have been the start of the quarterfinal games of the NCAA tournament. And obviously it would have been the Elite Eight. So I set about my task of what does it mean to be elite? So I usually start in the dictionary. I'm from Springfield, Mass. Merriam-Webster's right in Springfield, Mass. So I went right to the dictionary and I got a bunch of definitions for elite. The choice part, cream, the best of class, a socially superior part of society, a group of persons who by virtue of position or education exercise much power or influence, superior in quality, rank, skill, etc. The A-list, best, choice, creme de la creme, the upper crust. I also saw some negative things about elite. Snob, high horse, top lofty, orotund, sniffy, pontifical, pompatic, uppity. I was confused right out of the gate. But what confused me even more was as I looked at all of these definitions, I tried to correlate that to what we do, and it wasn't fitting. There was nothing there that was making me feel like elite was something that a trusted advisor affiliate would have themselves or their clients aspire to. So I thought about, what did elite mean to me? I know that I'm not as well known as a lot of you on the trusted advisor circuit, but those of you that do know me know that I do like to talk. Public speaking is one of my passions. And until I was a senior in high school, I had a speech impediment. And it was a significant speech impediment. I had a lateral lisp. I couldn't say S, C, or Z. And on the first day of my senior year in high school, I walked into my homeroom. And the homeroom teacher looked at me and he goes, "Are you Birch?" And I said, "Yep." And he goes, "You're going to go to room 106. And I went into 106 and there was a little woman that had her hair in a beehive and was overly made up by my recollection. Her name was Janet Rickaby. In 6 days, my speech impediment was gone. In 30 days, I was talking like I never had it. About 20 years ago, after I got promoted to vice president of marketing at Hasbro, I tracked Janet Rickaby down and I took her to lunch for the simple reason of thanking her for what she did for me. Because if it weren't for Janet Rickaby, I probably wouldn't be sitting here right now talking to all of you. And at that moment, I realized that someday I wanted to be somebody's Janet Rickaby. And that's the way I managed people, hoping that I could make a difference in their lives. But my takeaway as I thought about elite was that was my measure of elite. Janet Rickaby was my measure of elite, having the kind of impact on somebody's life that Janet Rickaby had on mine. So back to the Elite Eight, just to give a little background on the Elite Eight. You know, our little group probably wouldn't have gotten the crosshairs of the NCAA, but the NCAA, the Elite Eight, is a trademark of the NCAA. They trademarked it in 1997. It's used to define the final 8 teams in the Division 1, 2, and 3 men's and women's basketball tournament. It's also used to define the 8 baseball teams that make up the College World Series. I was actually involved with the NCAA when the Elite Eight came to be. As many of you know, Springfield, Massachusetts is the birthplace of basketball. And for 16 years, we hosted the NCAA Division II National Championships. And I was the ticket manager of that tournament. And during my tenure, the Elite Eight came to be. And I got my first real good example of goal setting from that basketball tournament. There was a coach and I can't remember what school, that every year as part of the tournament, we would have what we called the coach's luncheon. And we would gather all the people from the Springfield business community to celebrate the student athletes that had the opportunity to come to Springfield. And one of the coaches got up there and he was talking, and he talked about how he approached the season. And he goes, in our locker room, there's a sign when you walk into our locker room that everybody saw on the first day of practice and they looked at every day since. And all that sign said on it was Springfield. Didn't say anything else. It didn't talk about wins. It didn't talk about losses. All it said was Springfield, because that was our goal. And that kind of stuck with me. I said, that's pretty good concept of goal setting. Now, I didn't know anything about goal setting back then, and I can tell you the whole Trusted Advisors experience has been an eye-opener for me as it comes to goal setting, but that stuck with me. So now I started thinking about the Elite Eight, and then I started doing things to hurt myself. Because if a team loses their first game, are they still elite? If a team makes it to the Elite Eight with a losing record, but they won their conference tournament 2 games to get to Springfield, are they still elite? So now I was going down a road. Okay, I was finding that this concept of being elite isn't really cut and dry, is it? Now, we're being alliterative today with the Elite Eight, so I'm going to stick with that theme. And I'm going to talk about the Fantastic Four. And the Fantastic Four, of course, are Tammy, Gerard, Wendy, and Jenna. That's our Fantastic Four. And you know they weren't going to set me out to this task of kicking off a power summit without being armed. So they gave me their Elite Eight. And here they are: motivation, customer loyalty, information, leadership, marketing, intention, affirmations, assessments. My God, do you think there's any meat there? Thinking about the makeup of a Trusted Advisors Power Summit, we could spend all 3 days talking about these 8 things. Even better than that, just think about kicking off a power summit by telling the group, let's come up with the Elite Eight, and brainstorming what that list would look like. I am quite certain we'd have the fabulous 50 or even the heralded 100. And I think that someday it might be a good exercise to take these 8 things and say, how do we fit these into our businesses? But not for today. We're going to leave that for another day. So back to Elite. So now I started looking at, for examples of where Elite was used. Sports is a great feeding ground for the word elite. I came across an article about Elite, the Indiana Pacers. What do they have to do to be an elite team in the Eastern Conference? And I asked myself, what does that mean? What's the measure? How many wins do you have to have in a season to be elite? My confusion continued. Then I read an article about a young man from Bristol, Connecticut, a basketball player, and he was called an elite prospect. And his quandary was, should he go, as he entered his senior season, should he go to a prep school or go to the high school where his mom and dad were the respective all-time scoring leaders for men's and women's basketball at that high school? And they called him an elite prospect. He was the 77th ranked prospect in the USA. Well, the NBA has 30 teams and they draft 2 rounds. So he's an elite prospect, but he's not going to get drafted by the NBA. But there's over 250, 300 schools playing Division I basketball. So if he's the 77th prospect, he's going to have college basketball coaches crawling all over his yard. So now I came to realize, wow, now you got to factor in the size of the pot to figure out who's elite and who isn't elite. And then, of course, my favorite is the elite quarterback.
Superior Brett Fireplace, 510-532-7409. No need for a call back, just giving the heads
somebody is
available, and I've spoken to.
I can talk over anything, but not that.
September 4th. So the unit is here and ready.
Can somebody mute themselves that is getting a message? Thank you. So I am a New York Giant fan living 40 miles north of Boston. You can just imagine my pain. Okay, and one of my favorite is who's an elite quarterback. Now, obviously, 5 years ago, Tom Brady was an elite quarterback. There is no disputing that. But I read an article a couple of weeks ago that he's not an elite quarterback anymore. Well, how the hell does that happen? And then I came to the realization that if Tom Brady were to announce tomorrow that he was retiring, he'd be an elite quarterback again. So now you can be elite, you can go out of elite, and then you can become elite again. So now I don't know what to do. So I said, I know what I'll do. I'll go to where elite is most commonly used. If you're a Kennedy, a Hilton, a Carnegie, a Rockefeller, your birthright is your passage to being a member of society's elite. Now, if you make a lot of money after you're born, are you still elite? And then I started thinking about a little more, thinking being born elite. That seems hollow to me, and I'm sure it would seem hollow to this network of consultants and coaches who believe that people are capable of accomplishing almost anything with a set of skill and knowledge, buoyed by a positive attitude, smart goals, affirmations, and a desire for continuous improved results. So I dismissed the whole idea of the elite of society. Then I just tried to figure out, okay, who decides who's elite? I mean, is there a committee somewhere? Is there an elite, the elite committee? Is it like the Good Housekeeping seal of approval that you can be stamped elite? And then, whose eyes do we aspire to be elite in? Do we aspire to be elite of the eyes of the people in the room? Do we aspire to be elite in the eyes of consultants everywhere? Maybe we should aspire to be elite in our client's eyes. You know, is there value to having our client think that they're working with an elite consultant or that they have an elite coach? Confused? Well, me too. So I remember that guy's picture that I put up earlier. So I'm going to go back to him because he actually did send me something about being elite. And it confirmed where my head was at. He sent me something about performance, but he also sent me something about attitude. And Doug said that in his mind, elite is a person or team that looks forward, not back. And I had netted out that really elite is about attitude. And we talk a lot about attitude. If you haven't figured out yet, I like to digress. So I'm going to digress a little bit. I'm going to give you an example that I learned about attitude. My father was a pretty incredible person. He was born and raised in Jersey City, New Jersey. When he was 12 years old, the guys in the tavern would have to put a sponge in the glove to catch him. And when he was in 10th grade, he got a scholarship to the best prep school in Jersey City. But his parents didn't put a lot of value on that. His family was poor, so my father quit high school and went to work on an ice truck to help support the family. When he turned 18, he joined the Army. And even without a high school education, he got himself into officers candidate school. Came out a first lieutenant, volunteered for Korea 6 times because he wanted to make a career in the Army. But he was a supply officer at Fort Lewis in Washington, so they wouldn't send him. He saw a couple of his friends, a colonel and a major, denied the opportunity to re-enlist because they had to make space for the guys coming back from Korea. Decided that he wasn't, the Army wasn't going to be for him. So he came back to Jersey City, got a job at Bondbread. And 2 months after he came back, he met my mother. 4 months after he met her, he married her. And 9 months after he married her, he had me. So my father wasn't the kind of guy that fooled around. He worked at Milton Bradley Hasbro for 27 years. 26 of them, he was the division superintendent of Final Pack area. My father was a very competent man. I worked with him. I worked at a different section. He was competent. He was respected. He wasn't loved. He was hard-nosed. My father worked for that company for 27 years and missed 6 days of work. 3 of them, he was so sick, he dehydrated himself and passed out and hit his face on the sink in the bathroom. On the last day, my father in 1993, Hasbro announced that they would no longer provide insurance to retirees. And my mother was a diabetic who was legally blind. And in July of 1993, my father made the decision to retire. He was 62 years old. And he told them of his intention to retire, and the factory shut down for the first 2 weeks of July. And while my father was gone on vacation, they replaced him. And he got put on the sidelines for the last 6 months of his time at Hasbro. And on his last day, nobody from his hierarchy had the trouble to thank him for the 27 years of dedicated service. And I walked my father out that day from his office to the car. And he didn't say anything, but I could see by the look on his face that he was heartbroken. And I feared for his health. And I said goodbye to him, and I gave him a hug, and I walked back to my office, and I cried when I was walking back. And about 6 weeks after my father retired, I got a call from a friend of mine who was the vice president of manufacturing at Buddy L. I don't know who remembers Buddy L trucks, but at the time, Buddy L also made the Suzanne Summers Stair Stepper, which I'm sure all of us remember. And he said, "What's your father doing?" And I said, "Well, he's sitting in his chair, not doing much." He goes, "How old is he?" I said, "Well, he's 62. He goes, "That's too young to retire. What's his phone number?" And he called my father up and he said, "I need you up here. I need a plant manager up here." And the next thing I know, my mother and father were moving to the capital area of New York to a factory in Gloversville. My father was the plant manager. 2 weeks after he got the job, noticed he was having trouble climbing steps. And he went to the doctor and he got a stress test. And the doctor told him you needed quadruple bypass. And the doctor looked at him and says, well, when do you want to do that? And my father goes, can you do it right now? And my father went into that surgery with that type of attitude. And I went and visited him the day before he was going to have the surgery. And the guy in the room with him was going to have the same procedure on the same day. And that guy thought he was going to die. And all my father wanted to do was get this behind him so he could get back to work. 3 days later, I went to see my father. The guy in the bed next to him was where my father was in post-op. I asked my father how he was doing, thumbs up. When I was leaving, I said, is there anything I can get for you? And he looked at me straight in the eye. He goes, yeah, you can get me the hell out of here. My father went to work. My father went to the doctor 3.5 weeks after having quadruple bypass. And the doctor said he could drive. The next day, my father drove himself to work. That was 1993. My father passed away in 2015 from kidney failure. He never had an issue with his heart. They told him his heart should last him about 10 years. I know that we espouse that attitude, when added with skills and knowledge, is an incredible thing for people, and you're sprinkling goals and you're going to get improved results. I get that. But I never understood until I became part of this network that attitude can do a lot more than that. Attitude made my father's heart stronger.
Somebody else had started a meeting in its place is the error.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, Zoom's been having all sorts of problems today.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's
just
true.
about every school has gone down for the count because Zoom couldn't handle all the remote learning. So
That's
Yeah.
correct. That's right.
All right. That's okay. Like I said, I like to talk. I'll get right back on the roll.
Let's all go back on mute for him.
All right. So, like I was saying, my father's attitude, I think it had something to do with his heart. Now, I'm sure that any medical professional will tell me that that's not the case, but it certainly taught me about the power of a positive attitude. So, my other bit of digression is that the last time I addressed the Power Summit, I talked a little bit about my health and what I had done, that I had filled out a goal planning sheet, and that my A1C was 10.4, and I did this goal planning sheet and I lost 13 pounds, and I got my A1C down to 7.4, and I drove home, and on the Monday after the Power Summit, I got hurt. I've had a little bit of problem with my neck. It manifested itself as severe pain in my arm. I couldn't sleep on either side for about 2 months. Turned out I have some degenerative vertebrae issues in my neck. I went to physical therapy. I went on a cruise, came home, holiday time, got through the holidays, went on 3 cruises in January, spent a week in Florida, came back in February, and I gained back all the weight that I had lost. I was afraid to go get my A1C done. My blood sugars were, fasting blood sugars were in the 250 to 300 range. I actually had made the decision to call Wendy up and tell her that I was going to pack it in and I was going to retire. And I had rationalized it that, people start businesses and fail all the time. You had a successful career. I mean, I've had a bunch of people tell me I was the best boss they ever had. And, I wasn't healthy. I was ready to pack this in. Then I made a fundamental mistake. I looked in a mirror and I asked myself a question. Did you do the best that you could? And you know what? I didn't. And I didn't do it on purpose, because I figured if I treated this like, it doesn't matter, then I could rationalize to myself when I packed it in. That's why you weren't successful, because you didn't really want to do it. I thought about my father and his heart, and that was unacceptable to me. So I went to my kitchen table and I sat down and I did 2 goal planning sheets. One was to have a better attitude about my business, and one was for my health. I lost that 16 pounds back. I'm actually 0.2 of a pound less than I was at the October Power Summit. My last A1C was 6.6. I've logged my exercise and food for the last 22 weeks. And in the last 22 weeks, I've only had 2 days that I didn't exercise. As a matter of fact, here's my book. Every day in there. And for the last 8 weeks, I've done 1 hour of exercise every single day. And I told Wendy that you're going to start keeping me accountable. Tomorrow, I'm as excited as can be because I'm going to start the coaching academy. I'm part of a startup BNI in the adjacent town. And I'm just as excited about being part of a startup and helping other people get their businesses going as I am at the prospects of maybe doing something with mine. My definition of elite kind of crystallized as a result of my journey of trying to understand what elite is. And I figured out, whose eyes do I want to be elite in? And the answer is pretty simple. I want to be elite in my eyes. And who decides if I'm elite? And that answer is pretty simple too. I do. My final digression. When my kids were little, one of their favorite movies was The Never-Ending Story. Anybody ever seen it? It's a story of Bastian. And Bastian is a kid that gets bullied. And Bastian doesn't believe in Bastian. And he hides in an attic and he finds this book. And it's the book about Fantasia. And Fantasia is being destroyed by the nothing. And what is the nothing? It's apathy. And there's a hero in Fantasia. His name is Atreyu. But he can't face the nothing until he proves his worth. And one of the tests that Atreyu has to pass is he has to look in the mirror of his own true self. And that has always stuck with me, the mirror of your own true self. Because we can't lie to that person in the mirror. I can deceive all of you. I can make stuff up for Wendy on Monday, on Friday when we have our calls. I can't deceive myself. At the end of the book, Fantasia is being destroyed. Atreyu has seemingly beat the nothing when the princess yells out to Bastian, because Bastian is the one that needs to save Fantasia. Because Bastian has to believe in himself. So now I'm going to imagine myself as Bastian, because I need to believe in myself. We all need to believe in ourselves before we can make other people believe in themselves. So I've decided what the test for elite is. And it's pretty simple. At the end of the day, look in the mirror. And if you can look in the mirror and tell that person that you're looking at that you did the very best that you could do that day, it doesn't matter what the results were. If you can say you did the very best that you could do, because results can be altered by reality. Things can happen. But if you did the very best that you can do, you're elite. You can go to bed at night knowing that you're elite. And you know what's great about that test? That if you look in that mirror and your answer is no, you don't have to be upset. You can go to sleep knowing that when you wake up, you have an opportunity to be elite. I don't think it gets any better than that. So I will leave you with my final alliterative, the final 4. This was going to be a kickoff to Power Summit. So here's my final 4 for Power Summit. Participate. Okay? Join in the festivities. Don't let a few affiliates decide what we're going to talk about. Everybody should be joining in. Be inclusive. I know that a lot of people go to Power Summit because you get to see a lot of friends that you only see 3 times a year. But make sure you take time when you're there to go see those people that you don't know. Welcome them. Make them feel welcome. Make them feel comfortable. Be courageous. There is no greater fuel for ideas than other ideas. Don't be afraid to put something out there that might seem off the wall. I mean, we have dreams of that are available to us. We have wondrous experience in the room. Don't be afraid of putting out there that people might, that's okay. A lot of instances where great ideas came from something that people dismissed out of hand. And the last thing is to celebrate. And we should celebrate a lot. Because stop and think about it, what we have done. We have put ourselves in a position, okay, where every day when we wake up, we have the opportunity to make either our or somebody else's dream come true. How great is that? I thank you all for your time, and I open the floor up for any comments.
Great job, George.
Does anybody have any questions for George as far as it relates to attitude and elite?
Mine is more of a personal question, and that's, were you actually born in Margaret Hague?
I actually was.
You and my wife, and half of Hudson County.
My mother and father.
George, I thought that was well done.
Thank you, Doug.
Excellent.
I took a lot of, if it's any testament, I got a lot of notes.
Me too.
Well, I was going to say, since we have a little bit of time, my question is, so based upon everything that George has said this afternoon, would each of you be willing to share what your takeaway is, your biggest takeaway, and what you're going to do to apply it in your business? Doug, we can start with you.
Well, I got to admit, the timing on this is really good. Because when myself and my team have really been working on kind of taking Paradigm Branding up to another level. And so this whole idea about being elite, to me, really kind of hits home in terms of stuff that I've been kind of dabbling around the edges with, in terms of kind of how I want to market and who we want to market to and messaging. That is going to be particularly impactful, I think, over the next couple of weeks in specific. There's an awful lot of things where it truly seems like the stars are really lining up. And I'm not going to steal her thunder, but I'm suggesting strongly that you be on the lookout for a LinkedIn post from Janice Giannini, probably Thursday, with a video link in it. And I could go so far as to say, I dare you to watch that video without thinking of the talk that we just got from George. Boy, do those two things are going to go hand in glove like you just cannot imagine. So with that, I'm going to call on Lauren.
For me, the idea of, and you picked up on the word, Doug, that the word elite, it's not a word that, in my world, I would necessarily give myself permission to apply to my business. And yet, when I think about it, it is exactly my hope and my desire and my strongest push for my clients. My clients deserve elite coaching, elite fundraising consulting. And so to the idea of applying it to me personally and to how I conduct my business is scary and something that I would really like to consider. Thank you.
Lauren, who are you passing this to?
Say it.
Who are you going to pass the baton to?
I am passing it to my fellow colleague, Bertha.
I felt that. I knew that was coming. George, that was excellent. You know, it was, it's right on time because I had a really rough Friday. So I had to look in the mirror to prep myself and get myself cheered and ready to go for this week. And looking in the mirror is really, and looking at yourself really, in all honesty, is really one of those superpowers if we do it honestly. And I think that similar to what Lauren was just saying, I have some kind of averse feeling to the word elite. But when you defined it in the word cream of the crop, you know, something that rises to the top, I would love to aspire to that, to offer that to others, to help others' dreams come true, and at the same time, mine as well. So thank you for today's presentation and the challenge to move forward and to participate. I'm taking that on. So, and I'm going to tag Steve.
I knew Bertha was going to tag me. Thank you, George. That was a great talk. I have to tell you that I'm a little under the weather. It was just a week ago that I had emergency gallbladder surgery, and I'm still working toward getting over that. Over the weekend, I also ended up having an allergic reaction to the pain meds that I was on. So I'm also very tired with dealing with all the hives and all the stuff related to that. I think the one thing that I would take away, particularly in this time of COVID, really is to really think about what it means to be elite as we think about our businesses and as we transform ourselves. And one of the challenges that I'm facing currently is taking over the Haas Alumni Forum program from my colleague who had owned it under his Alumni Forum Services umbrella. But I am taking that on under my Sato Consulting banner. And so I'm currently working toward creating a new website, creating a new marketing plan, a new branding plan, much what Doug, like you were talking about, rebranding, as a portion of what I do for Sato Consulting. And I do have to remember that this whole idea of being the best, of being that rising to the top, of being elite is part of what it is that we all do. And so I think that's what I'm taking away from today. And I think it would really, as I think about what I'm doing for rebranding and rebuilding this program under my own umbrella, it's going to be a really important piece of how I look at myself and how I look at promoting and marketing the effort that I'm doing. So thank you, George. And I'm going to go and turn it over to Nancy on the green wall.
Thank you, Steve. The reason I'm on the green wall is literally in the middle of this, my computer went down. So that's where I usually do my Zoom call. So then I had to get quickly on my cell phone, and I don't have the virtual background behind me. And Steve, I hope you're feeling better. I'm so sorry to hear that you went through all this.
I'm just tired, but it's getting better.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. Because Steve is one of my coaching buddies. We have 4 of us that get together once a month to practice coaching, and he's the coordinator of all of it. George, it was an excellent presentation. And as Doug said, it was so timely. because literally what I was doing right before this, I am about to do a kickoff for strategic planning for a client. So I typically go back and look what I have done, where I am. And I pulled up, I hate to say this, I pulled up the strategic plan from 2008. And I looked at it and I said, oh my God, I actually had a goal that said sell processes. How bad is that? I mean, it's like, obviously, Wendy, I have learned a lot since I've been around. But I love the idea of the word elite, because in the current version of strategic planning in the first week, we encourage clients to review Simon Sinek and start with why and the golden circle. And I love his continued comments. I believe. So this is a great affirmation for us. I believe that I am an elite coach. So thank you so much for I'm sorry I missed a part of it, but George, thank you so much for the guidance and the idea. I got to find the rest of the people on the call so I can pass it off, right? I am going to pass it off to Arnie.
Those who were watching my picture, you saw me going in and out. And also I didn't start until 3:15 because I was at the dentist. And so I am having a difficult time speaking because this is all numb. Now okay. So I did not get enough of George's talk to have an opinion. So I will pick it up on the recording because I see up at the top left of my computer that it is recorded. So because I can't speak, and because I don't have enough knowledge, I cannot comment. And I don't see anybody else on the screen that I can give it to. So I apologize.
So we'll give it back to George.
Give it back to George. Wendy, you're going to tell us where we can pick it up as a recording. I'm sure it's in the website.
I certainly appreciate your kind words. I had what I thought was a very successful career. I don't think that's changed. My wife is happy. We live on the beach. We don't worry about putting food on the table. But the 3+ years that I've been involved with this has certainly taught me a lot of things. The goal planning sheet is elite, and I don't care by what measure you want to apply or whatever you want to say about it, because I was a corporate guy. I worked for a Fortune 500 company. Every January we did objectives. Every December, we dusted them off and looked at those objectives so that we could do merit raises and bonuses. And it wasn't until I became part of the Trusted Advisors Network that I came to the realization that there was just one little step missing to what I was doing, putting together an action plan on how we're going to accomplish those objectives. And, and then when you think about attitude, and it gets you to go back and start thinking about times in your life when you've seen what a positive attitude can do. And conversely, those times in your life when you've seen what a negative attitude can do. And that when you realize that you yourself are guilty of not having the right attitude to accomplish what it is that you want to accomplish, then you can go two directions with that. You can let it paralyze you, or you can let it inspire you. I have spent my entire life trying to help people. I've always been involved in charitable endeavors, and it took me a while, but I now realize when I look up from my desk and I see team leadership and executive leadership and leadership, and when I go to a power summit and I get to gather all this knowledge and passion from all these people, that I've never been in a better position to help people. And that the only thing that stands between me and that is having the right attitude to do that. So that's kind of why I netted on that being my definition of elite. It certainly makes me feel a lot better when the dean of students agrees with you unsolicited. And, you know, so it kind of buoyed my position when unsolicited Doug kind of told me the same thing that I had been thinking. And sometimes, and like I said, I love to talk. So when Wendy said, geez, I'll give you a half an hour where you can talk and everybody else will be on mute, there's no way in hell I was ever going to turn that down.
Fantastic.
However, it was a very, very powerful half-hour conversation. I appreciate you taking the time to share that with us today.
Thanks, George.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Stay safe,
Thank you.
everybody.
Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye now.
I'll be back in touch, Wendy, at some point.
Sounds good.